Today's gospel teaches us a very simple and yet profound lesson that the proud of this world, the Pharisees and the scribes and the proudly thinker, in this case St. Peter, reject the Lord. In the case of St. Peter, we know it wasn't deeply rooted. It was matter of his ignorance. He was, by the grace of God, a humble man, and he would become the first vicar of Christ. And today, in the life of the Church, we celebrate the memorial of a saint who truly understood this lesson, that God rejects the proud and comes to the humble, St Isidore the Farmer. For he lived at the beginning of a time in which the Catholic Church truly became entrenched in the culture. That is, the culture itself became Catholic. And so, like many of that generation, or as it is described and noted by the fact that the farmers were more aware of the work of the angels in the field than they were of their own labors. And in the case of St. Isidore, this would literally become true, because oftentimes, because of his love of the supernatural life, he would arrive late for his farming duties. But while he was at the holy sacrifice of the Mass, the angels would take over his labors in the field. And indeed, the plot of land that he would till would always produce at least 3 times more crops than all of the other workers' plots. And so St. Isidore truly shows us and gives us a lesson for our own age and for our own century, for he knew that all things were rooted in the supernatural life, and that the labor of mankind itself was only truly an authentic labor insofar as in some way it was related to the virtue of charity. And that is a most profound lesson that our modern culture must learn, for most of what passes for human labor is not really truly human labor, because it has one goal and one goal only: to increase the wealth of those who are practicing the labor. And while this is a benefit of human labor and it helps to provide for the family, it is not the essence of human labor. For St. Isidore understood full well that we were a composite of body and soul, and that we must praise God with our lips and with our hearts, and that we must use our bodies also in order to glorify God, and so we do so by the works of charity. And so let us turn this day to St. Isidore the Farmer, and particularly asking him to intercede so that our generation may become more aware of the work of the angels than we are of our own works, and that we too may not be motivated by greed and by lust, which is fueling the modern world, but we may be motivated by that virtue that was characteristic of St. Isidore: love of God and doing all things out of love of God, so that everything we do is associated with the virtue of charity, and it shows forth the faith that we have, that faith that Peter would ultimately acquire, and that faith that as the vicar of Christ he would be responsible to give to all the saints, and including St. Isidore. And so the hallmark note of the true Christian, the true Catholic, is one who is filial devoted to the vicar of Christ, as St. Isidore was, because he knows it is through the vicar of Christ that all things come to us, because he is put as head over the church. And so he too is sustained by the immaculate by the intercession of the Immaculate Mediatrix of all graces. And so let us truly strive to understand that it is only the love of the mother that can establish a true Catholic culture. It is only the love of the mother that establishes Peter solidly in the faith. And so it is the mother's love that imbues the whole church and trickles down even to the laborers in the field like St. Isidore, so that everything from the head of the church, the vicar of Christ, to the least significant member of the church, that is, by the way and judgments of the world, not by the ways and judgments of God, all of those vocations in the church, all of those missions are exercised under the maternal care of the Mother of God. And indeed, St. Isidore also is a model for our modern society, for it was not merely St. Isidore that would become a saint in this family, also his wife, known as St. Maria de la Cabeza, that is, St. Mary of the head, because often her head is used in processions in honor of her. And so they gave their lives entirely to the Lord. They were blessed with one child who would be saved miraculously after falling into a well, but would ultimately be taken from them at a very early age. They would see this as a sign and a call to God to live perfect chastity, and perfect chastity they would live for the remainder of their lives. And in doing so, they were not less generous by not being blessed by God with any natural children, but they were more generous because they truly became a mother and father to the owner of the field, to the laborers in the field. And so they gave an example of Christ and Christ's mother to each and every soul they encountered. And so they truly, even though they were of humble origin and exercised humble labor, they truly were the foundation stones that were laid to establish a Catholic culture. And so let us pray again that Christendom may return, for it is a modern error that believes it is impossible for Christendom to ever to return. This ultimately is a denial of the doctrine of the resurrection, for wherever Christ is love, Christ can be established on a universal level. And so let us strive to be those foundation stones by which the new Christendom will arise. And indeed, let us strive to have a holy rivalry with the Christendom that St Isidore and his wife were involved in the beginning in order to establish. Let us seek to strive a Christendom that exceeds that Christendom of old, so that the love of God exceeds in our day and in our age that love that was exercised by the saints of old. And so let us always strive to understand that for all of us, every human soul, whether we are united to Christ in his mystical body, or whether we are the members of those striving to seek the destruction and the dethronement of Christ, all souls are called to become saints, and that they can only receive sainthood through the ministry of the Church, and hence they can only receive it through Christ and Mary. And so let us strive to receive that gift, so that we may join St Isidore, his wife, and all those saints who have followed us, praising our good God together for all eternity by uniting our voices, as St. Isidore does now, to the voices of the angels who would assist him in his human labors.